we'll work on Lab 13 now related to users. So everything we've been doing up to this point has just been under that default super user that has full privileges. And so normally when you're creating a project for your customer, each person that's logging in will have their own independent username and password, and you can actually give them kind of different permissions in terms of what types of apps they can use, what types of overrides they can set. And so we can use the users in the host app to create those sorts of things. And there's two basic users other than the super user. There's an admin user, which is what I think most of your users will end up being. And there's an operator user, which is a pretty limited user in that one of the big things an operator can't do due to the way the database is built is they can't change schedules. So if there's a schedule that needs to be changed, they have to be an admin kind of at a minimum level. And so in Lab 13, we'll use the host app to create users, and then we'll look at some of the user options. And so the host app is not nav sensitive. There's Chrome. There it is. So I will do menu host. So there's the host app, and I'll just kind of shut these extra tabs down, and they kind of start to build sometimes. And so we saw that there's some choices on the top, including settings. That's where we set the email stuff. But going back to host, there's some choices on the left, and licenses is one of them. The training license that we have will run through the end of the month. And after you complete your certification labs, and what we'll have to do, and make a note here before we finish up here, is choose a day to complete the certification labs. So whether that's potentially later this week or next week, we'll set that later today. And so after you complete the certification lab, you'll get a 1-year engineering tool license, which I think has like 5,000 caps in it. And it renews every year. So as part of your training fee, you get the first year as part of that. If you want to renew after that, there is a fee to renew annually. But then you always have the ability to run the latest version. And you get all the, enough caps to build a project, that sort of thing. But here in the licenses view, there's a couple of things. If we ever sent you a new license to install, you would click this install button, and you would point at the license, which would have a .props extension. There's host info here. And the most important part here really is this host ID. And so that's the serial number that the license is keyed to. And so if you buy IntelliFront pre-installed on a computer that we provide, then we've already got it licensed, keyed to the right host ID. If you buy a software-only license that you're going to install on hardware provided by you or your customer, then you would install the software, send us the host ID, tell us how many caps you need, then we would send you a license that you would then install. So that's where you can find that host ID information. That's the same host ID that you see during the initial installation. That's another place that you can capture that information and send to us when installing. Here in the lower right, there's the license, which shows you kind of how many caps. The license allows how many of those can be historied and how many of those can have the aux tag, which does not allow them to be historied. So those two values add up to the total caps. On a normal license, the historied points would be 20% of the total caps. Here it's split half and half. Then the usage view on the right, it'll tell you how many points you're using for each project, because you can run multiple projects on the same computer that are isolated from each other. And as long as all the projects and all the caps added up for all the projects don't exceed the total cap limitation, then that works out okay. And so this blue line tells us how many points have the aux tag, and the kind of red line tells us how many do not. And then you get some sums at the bottom to see how close you are to the limit. And if you do start to approach the limits of your license, I mentioned earlier that you can add a new license, like you can stack licenses on top of each other. So if you bought a 2,000 cap license and realized that you needed more caps, you can add 1,000 on top of that to have a 3,000 cap license. It's always cheaper to buy more caps at a time in terms of the price per cap. So buying a 2,000 cap license is much less expensive than buying a 1,000 cap license and then adding 1,000 extra on top of that, even though it gets you the same result at the end. So buying as many as you think you might safely need to get started is the best practice for the initial purchase. So going back onto the users app, there are some default users here. We've been using this SU user. And so if we wanted to add a user, then we can click this create button at the bottom as described in the lab. So we're in the users app, we click plus create at the bottom. Then we can give our user a name. And I would suggest that you either write down or type it somewhere what you're going to enter in terms of their username and the password that we'll enter. So I'm going to say username equals Mike. First name Mike, last name Fong. Email address, notice, is not a required field. It's only required if that user needs to receive emails when alarms occur. I mentioned that there are two users other than the super user, which admin is typical, operators a more restricted user, which can't do something like changing schedules. So in the lab, I think it says to make them an admin level user. So we'll choose admin. My time zone will be Los Angeles. You could leave yours at New York. And the language is English. Click create. So here's where you can then set the password, and it by default does need to be a strong password. I'll show you there is actually a setting where if you want to allow less strict passwords, you can, but I think we're moving in that direction, so people are kind of used to having relatively strong passwords. So I think it needs to be 10 characters, uppercase, lowercase, special character, meaning punctuation. So I'm going to do capital Mike, capital F, 2020, exclamation point. I think that satisfies the requirement. It's 10 characters, uppercase, lowercase, numbers, and exclamation point for punctuation. So as you start to type, it'll kind of tell you if your password meets the requirements. So MIKE, capital F, 2020, exclamation. So as you start adding and meeting the requirements, then it'll pull that off of the list. And the first password you create can be pretty simple and default because it's going to ask them to, the first time they log in, it's going to ask them to change or to enter the new password, which can be the same as the original. But if you had some default password that you assign to all users, it's not a big deal because they're forced to change it when they first log in, and at that point they're responsible to put something in that's unique. So enter a password that meets the requirements, hit save. If you do want to allow less strong passwords, in the settings view, if you scroll all the way down, there's a couple of user options. There's enable password reset, which allows them to reset passwords via email. There's the password policy, which defaults to strong. And so strong means 10 characters, uppercase, lowercase, number, special characters. Moderate, still 10 characters, but only 3 of the following, uppercase, lowercase, number, special characters. and then week is just at least a character. So those are some of those choices. Max activity is how much user activity we keep for a given user. So if somebody's very active, then after they've done 100 different things, then it overwrites the old one. Max resets is how many times they can reset their password every day. And I don't know what this auth plugin is. I've never used it. So. But anyway, there's some choices in terms of users there in the settings tab. So going back to hosts and users, I've got this new user that is named Mike that is an admin user. And so step 4 says click the edit users icon for the new user. So that would be the little, is that a screwdriver and a wrench? You click edit user, then you get some additional choices here. Basically the stuff at the top we set during initial creation, and then the permission stuff is where you can apply additional restrictions on a per user basis. So project access, I only have one project, but if you had multiple projects, you could enable only certain projects and disable others. Application access, when we go to the menu right there where end user apps and system integrator apps and advanced apps, in the application access dropdown, you can individually select which apps that user has access to. And so there's a suggested list here. I don't know that I'm going to follow it exactly, but you could choose whichever ones you want them to see. So most of the end user apps, I think you typically would want them to have access to. System integrator apps. Summary builder, if they want to build their own summaries, might be good. I would think generally they don't build graphics and write logic builder programs. I like to be able to see DB builder. Maybe if you're helping them troubleshoot something, you might want to go look and see what's shown in DB builder. So I turned off logic builder and graphics builder. And then in the advanced apps, they don't usually need most of those. Perhaps Folio. I don't ever use the connectors that much at all. The host app you actually only see if you're a super user, I believe. So I'll leave it turned on just to confirm that. And then debug and jobs, you wouldn't need. Settings maybe, but unlikely. Functions probably not. And then miscellaneous, I don't think they would need any of those either. So it doesn't need to match exactly, but just know that you have the ability on a per user basis to set which apps they can see. So make some changes, hit apply, builds the list there. Action access has to do with the gears where we can do set defaults and manuals and emergencies. And so here, actually, it says action access, we want to do, by default, they just get, or actually, I shouldn't say that. In the action access, then you can choose if just the set defaults is level 3, sets and manuals is level 6, and sets manuals and emergencies is level 9. That's kind of described here in step 6. So if you go to action access in the dropdown, flip the switch, and then here's the number, and you can choose just set or sets and manuals or sets manuals and emergencies. And so it says to enable, so we want set manual and emergency, so we'll choose 9 as emergency and apply. And then most of the rest of these fields just have to do with, you can enter your own tag limitations. So if your sites were tagged, you could enter the tags for the sites they should have access to. If your floors are tagged, you can do something similar. I'm going to do some pretty simple examples here just to show you that they work. They're not that practical, but for equip access, as an example, I'll just type VAV. So then they can't see RTU equips, they can't see AHU equips, they just see equips tagged as VAVs. And for the point access, I'm going to type temp so that they just see temperature points, which means not airflow points, not alarm points, stuff like that. Let's see, the rest of these, I don't think I'm going to set anything in. Custom properties, this is where we talked about if they're sending emails. If you create an email topic, then they can subscribe. A digest is like once a day summary. Immediate is send when they occur. Although I believe there's a limitation still where you only get one email per alarm per day. So if something's going in and out of alarm, you only get an email on the first occurrence. And that's meant to kind of avoid looking like spam. There's this reverse magic bubbles alt key. And that's like when we click on like a floor or a zone and you get those magic bubbles bottom left. Some people don't like those. And so if you set reverse magic bubbles to yes, then they won't see the magic bubbles normally. When they click, it'll just go to kind of the default, what would be shown as the biggest bubble. And the reason it says alt key is that you can press the alt key to reverse the action. So if reverse magic bubbles is no, and you press the alt key when you click on a zone, for example, it'll immediately go into the zone and not prompt you with magic bubbles. If reverse magic bubbles is yes, then they don't see the magic bubbles by default, but if they hold the alt key down and click like on a zone, it would then show the magic bubbles. So I'll set it to yes, just so we can see how they work, and I'll show you the alt key. We'll talk more about the custom header later. And then the home path I mentioned, if we set a top level graphic that all users see by default, but if you want them to see a unique page that's not the top level graphic when they first log in, then you could enter a path here, and that's what they would see on initial login. But I'm not going to worry about that right now. So I made some changes. I'll click Save. The user settings have been successfully saved. So we've done that. Now it says log out and log in as the new user, and you could see some of the differences like the apps and whatnot. So to log out, I can go to the top right here. It shows me I'm logged in as FU. Hit the drop down to log out. So now my new username is Mike. My password is capital M, lowercase IKE, capital F, 2020 exclamation. Log in. So the first time a new user logs in, they see the end user license agreement. You do have to scroll all the way down and click accept. And here's where you're required to enter your new password, which can be the same as your old password. So capital M, lowercase IKE, capital F, 2020 exclamation. And then you have to confirm it here. Capital M, IKE, capital F, 2020 exclamation.
So I did.
So enter your new password or the same password twice in both, same in both fields. Hit save. And now when you open the project, I still get the top level graphic. But now, for example, if I go, well, here, let's look at the apps list. If you go to the menu, notice the apps are limited. And I mentioned that the host app, even if it's enabled, they don't see it because you have to be a super user to see the host app. So that's a limited list based on the restrictions that I entered. And now if I go to a floor, notice I didn't get magic bubbles. It just immediately clicked. If I hold the Alt button down on my keyboard when I click on the floor, then I get the magic bubbles. So the Alt lets you have the non-default behavior for your magic bubble setting. So if reverse magic bubbles is set, that means don't show me the magic bubbles unless I press Alt. So when I click floor, it immediately goes to the floor. Likewise, if I click on a zone on a floor plan, it immediately goes to the zone graphic. If I go back to the floor plan and hold the Alt key on my keyboard when I click on a zone, then it shows me the magic bubbles. So here, notice that because I said that points were restricted to just points with the temp tag, notice that a lot of the points are missing from my graphic and my overview box because this user only sees points with the temp tag. So I mentioned that that's not a particularly practical example, but it's an easy way to show you that how it works. Also notice that since I don't have access to the AHU equip, I don't see the AHU as a related graphic. And if I go to the I button, actually, I guess you have to press Alt. The I button is disabled when you have reverse magic bubbles because unless I press the Alt button and press I. Oh, actually, it does show me the AHU5 graphic, but it won't go there. So, and that the filtering extends even out to like DB Builder. Since I have DB Builder access, if I go to Menu and go to DB Builder, if I drill down through my equip tree to Training Floor 1, notice I only see the VAV equipped. It's as if the air handler and the rooftop controllers don't exist to me because my user says you only see VAV stuff. Yeah. Likewise, if you drill down into points, notice I only see the points with the temp tag because of the restriction applied to my user. So as far as I can tell, these are the only points that are associated with those VAVs. So you can apply different tags to filter that down if you want to restrict access to different users. So one difference between a super user and an admin user is the admin user doesn't get access to the host app. You actually do see it during initial login, but you don't notice you don't get the left sidebar with users and whatnot on the. And then once you, from the main page here, I can't return to the host app. I can change schedules since I'm a admin user. So if I go to the site level and choose schedules, oh, no, because it's point, that would be a point that is not related to, it doesn't have a temp tag, so I don't see schedules. Yeah, so there are no schedules for that user. So I'm going to remove that that temp tag so that I think it's the temp tag that's limiting my schedule changes, but we'll go confirm that. So I am going to log out. So I can log out with menu. Top right here, it says log out. I'll close the extra one there. So I'll log in as a super user again because I need to be a super user to be able to edit user changes or edit user settings. So here's where I get the left sidebar since I'm a super user. So I just want to confirm what allows me to change schedules. And so I'm going to edit user for the mic user. And let's see, I'm going to remove the point access first. Because I did choose schedules here, I believe. Yeah, it was there. So I'm going to see if it's the equip or the point access that's preventing me from changing schedules. So now that I removed that point restriction, I'm going to log out top right, log in as Mike, capital M-I-K, lowercase I-K-E, capital F, 2020 exclamation. Open my project, and let's see what schedules look like now. Yeah, so it was the point access. Oh, because it's writing to a point that I don't have access to. Notice I don't have air handler schedules because I still have the VAV equip filter, but I can change a schedule. So if I choose my ASIC 1 schedule, I can edit. Remembering, maybe I didn't mention, to edit a schedule, there is not a lot of right-clicking in IntelliFront since it's designed for mobile and you don't right-click on your phone. So if I wanted to change Wednesday's schedule, what you do is a long click on the point and then you'll get those slider bars. So if we were going to run late today, I could say, okay, Wednesday, let's go to 3. And then I can scroll up and apply. And now that's the schedule change there. So I
Hey,
wanted to
Mike,
show you that admin level. Yeah,
I saw
go ahead.
everything you just did. While I'm in the edit user, what did you toggle on and off?
To do what?
Okay, so we're back in the admins, and you went to edit user. What was it that you changed? I saw everything you did
Oh,
afterwards. So that's
yeah, I removed the temp point access tag because if I need access to
okay.
the writable point for the schedule to be able to see and change the schedule.
Okay, perfect. That's cool.
Yeah. And so I do want to create, it's not in the lab, but I want to create an operator level user to show you some of the differences. And one of the big differences is that operators can't change schedules. So I'm going to log out, close my old tab, log in as SU, super 2020 exclamation. And so now I'm going to go to, let's make a note here. Mike is an admin, and I'm going to make a new username called OP. That's an operator. Password will be operator. How many characters is that? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And then I'll do 20 exclamation. So I'm going to create a user called operator. First name op, last name orator. And I'm going to choose the operator user role. I'll be Los Angeles in English. So I'll create that user, and the password will be capital O, lowercase PERATOR 20 exclamation. That satisfies the requirement. And then I will go to the top right to log out, and then OP, capital O, lowercase PERATOR 20 exclamation. Log in. Oh, did I not type that right? Maybe, did I not? Oh, I must have named my user operator. Yeah, I meant to name him something short like OP, but I named them operator.
You can make it whatever you want.
So scroll down, accept, password, capital O, lowercase PERATOR 20 exclamation. Confirm it with capital O, lowercase PERATOR 20 exclamation. Save it. So one of the things you'll see here is I can go to a floor, and I can go to a zone, and I can change set point. That works okay as an operator. But one of the biggest restrictions is not being able to change schedule. And so if I tried to go to the schedules and I tried to edit, it will show me the schedule, but if I were to make a change to the schedule and apply it, I get this error. And it's not obvious why the error occurs, but the error is because operators don't have enough privileges to the database to make that change. So that's the biggest restriction that an operator has. They can do output overrides, they can do set point changes, but they can't change schedules. Also notice that operators only have the end user app. I didn't apply any application restrictions, but it's only showing me all of the end user apps. I don't see system integrator apps, and I don't see advanced apps. So I wanted to show you that mainly in case you run into that case with the schedules. And so you'll know why it happens, and perhaps you just don't create operator level users if schedule changes are part of their responsibilities.